I'm going to tell you a secret about secrets. A mathematical secret that governs all cryptography that has ever existed and will ever exist. An absolute threshold that defines when a message is truly unbreakable and where it is only temporarily secure. Most people think cryptography is about complicated passwords, mysterious algorithms, powerful computers, and partly it is. But deep down, at the most fundamental level, cryptography is about information. About how much information the enemy has and how much it doesn't. And I proved mathematically that there is a limit that separates perfect secrecy from imperfect secrecy. A limit that no technology, no computer, no intelligence can circumvent. There is a limit, and he is absolute. This story begins before my famous 1948 paper on information theory. As it begins during World War II. I worked at Bell Labs, and some of my work was classified, secret, directly involved in the war effort. I worked on secure communication systems for the American military. And in this context, I came across a problem that obsessed me. What makes a secret code really secure? Not safe in practice, in the sense that no one has managed to break it yet, but safe in principle, mathematically secure. Secure in a way that no adversary, with infinite time, with infinite computers, with infinite intelligence, could ever break. That question seemed impossible to answer. The history of cryptography is a story of humiliation. A long chain of codes that seemed unbreakable until they were broken. The Egyptians used simple substitution. It worked for centuries until someone noticed that certain letters appear more than others. Frequency analysis, broken. The Caesar cipher, which swapped each letter for another at a fixed distance in the alphabet, seemed ingenious. Broken in seconds by anyone who tried all 25 possibilities. Vigenère cipher, which used a keyword to vary the substitution for each letter, was called le chiffre, indecipherable. The indecipherable cipher. It resisted centuries. But it was broken by Charles Babbage and Friedrich Kasiski in the 19th century, when they realized that repetitions in the key created patterns in the encrypted message. Standards are the death of secrecy. And the most dramatic case, the Enigma machine. The Nazis trusted her with their lives. And with the lives of millions of soldiers. Enigma had trillions of possible configurations. It looked absolutely unbreakable. But it was broken. First by the Poles, who built machines called bombs to systematically test configurations. Then by the British at Bletchley Park, where Alan Turing and his team built even more powerful versions. The breach of Enigma shortened the war by at least 2 years, according to historians' estimates, saved millions of lives, and it proved devastatingly that confidence in security without a mathematical basis is a dangerous illusion. Each generation thought its code was secure, and each succeeding generation proved that it was not. So was there any code that was truly, mathematically, forever unbreakable? Or was all encryption just a matter of time before it was defeated? That was the question I wanted to answer. And the answer I found is one of the most important things I've ever proven. And at the same time, one of the least known. In 1945, I wrote a paper called A Mathematical Theory of Cryptography. It was classified as confidential secret. It was not published to the public. It wasn't until 1949, after security restrictions were relaxed, that I published a civilian version called Communication Theory of Secrecy Systems. This paper did for cryptography what my 1948 paper did for communication. He turned an art into a science. He turned intuition into mathematics. And it revealed truths that no intuition alone could have reached. The first truth is the most important. Perfect secrecy exists. It is mathematically possible to create an encryption system that is absolutely unbreakable. Not difficult to break, impossible to break, against any opponent, with any resource, in any amount of time. The encrypted message does not contain any information about the original message. Zero. Nothing. The adversary who intercepts the encrypted message is in the same situation as someone who did not intercept anything. The encrypted message is, for him, indistinguishable from random noise. It doesn't matter how smart he is. It doesn't matter how many computers you have. It doesn't matter how much time you dedicate. The information just isn't there. It's not hidden so hard to find. It's not complicatedly coded. It does not exist in the encrypted message. Point: this is extraordinary. In a world where almost everything can be broken with enough effort, there is a category of secrecy that is absolutely, permanently irrational, irrevocably safe. But, and here comes the limit, this security comes at a price, a very high price. A price that defines the upper limit of encrypted communication. Price is the key. For perfect secrecy, the secret key needs to be at least as long as the message, not nearly as long, at least as long. If your message is 1,000 bits long, your key needs to be at least 1,000 bits long. If your message is 1 million bits long, your key needs to be at least 1 million bits long. If you want to encrypt an entire book with perfect secrecy, you need a key as long as the book. And this key needs to be completely random, not pseudo-random, not generated by an algorithm. Truly random in the sense that each bit of the key is independent of all others and equally likely to be a 0 or a 1. And the key needs to be used only once, never reused. One message, one key. Discard and use another. This system is called one-time pad, the single-use cipher, and I have proven that it is the only system that achieves perfect secrecy. Not one of the possible systems, the only one. Any encryption system that uses a key smaller than the message inevitably leaks some information. It may leak a little. A tiny, virtually undetectable amount may leak. But it leaks. Mathematically, information escapes. And with enough information, with enough messages encrypted with the same key or keys derived from the same source, a patient adversary can, in principle, reconstruct the original message. Not necessarily in practice with current technology, but in principle. The possibility exists. And in cryptography, possibility is vulnerability. That's the limit. The upper limit of encrypted communication. If the key is as long as the message and truly random and used only once, secrecy is perfect. If either of these conditions fails, secrecy is imperfect. It could be very good. It can be extraordinarily difficult to break. But it's not perfect. And the difference between perfect and very good in cryptography is the difference between impossible and improbable. Improbable can become probable with enough technology. Impossible remains impossible forever. Let me explain to you why the one-time pad works. The idea is surprisingly simple. You take the original message and combine each bit with the corresponding bit of the key using an operation called XOR, or exclusive. If the message bit is equal to the key bit, the result is 0. If they are different, the result is 1. The encrypted message is the result of this operation. And to decrypt, the receiver performs the same operation with the same key, and recovers the original message. Why is this unbreakable? Because if the key is truly random, the encrypted message is also truly random. It does not carry any structure. No default, no regularity. Each sequence of bits is equally likely to be an encrypted message, regardless of what the original message says. This means that the encrypted message is compatible with any possible original message. The opponent cannot eliminate any possibility. It cannot say, this encrypted message probably corresponds to this original message, because all original messages are equally likely. The figure does not favor anyone. It doesn't reveal any. It's like trying to guess which card someone picked from a deck without any clues. None. Each card is equally likely. The information is simply not available. And why do smaller keys fail? Because if the key is smaller than the message, it doesn't have enough randomness to completely mask the message. The key cannot provide more randomness than it contains. If the key is 100 bits long and the message is 1000, the remaining 900 bits of the message are being masked by randomness derived, recycled, reused in some way. And any reuse creates patterns. Patterns that an adversary can exploit. Patterns that leak information. It may be little information, it could be almost nothing, but it's not zero, and zero is what perfect secrecy demands. I formalized this with an equation. I showed that the amount of information that the encrypted message reveals about the original message is determined by the difference between the entropy of the message and the entropy of the key. If the key has an entropy equal to or greater than the message, the information revealed is zero. Perfect secrecy. If the key has lower entropy, the information revealed is positive. Imperfect secrecy. The equation is accurate. There is no ambiguity. There is no gray area. It's either perfect or it's not. And the border between the two is exactly the point where the key length equals the message length. Now, what does this mean in practice? It means that perfect secrecy is impractical for most applications. Think about what it would take. To encrypt a video call with perfect secrecy, you would need a key as long as NTO'd the entire video. Millions of bits per second of random key, pre-shared with the other person, used once and discarded. For every second of call, megabytes of key. For every day of communication, terabytes. The logistics of generating, storing, transporting, and synchronizing these keys are prohibitive. It just doesn't work for mass communication. And that's why modern cryptography doesn't use perfect secrecy. She wears something different. Something I would classify as computational secrecy. Systems like RSASS elliptic curve cryptography are not mathematically unbreakable. They are computationally unbreakable. This means that breaking them would require such an absurd amount of computation that, with current and predictable technology, it would take longer than the age of the universe. Billions of years, trillions perhaps. In practice, it is safe. No one will wait trillions of years to read your email. But in principle, in theory, with enough computing power, these systems can be broken. The information is there, in the encrypted message, hidden so extremely difficult to find, but present, unlike the one-time pad, where the information simply does not exist. And here's what worries modern cryptographers. Quantum computers. A sufficiently powerful quantum computer could use Shor's algorithm to factor enormous numbers in polynomial time. And the security of RSA depends exactly on the difficulty of factoring large numbers. If a quantum computer can factor these numbers quickly, the RSA drops from safe to unsafe in an instant. Not because the math has changed, because computing power has changed. And this is exactly what my theorem predicts. Computational secrecy depends on the power of the adversary. Perfect secrecy does not depend on anything. It's absolute, regardless of technology, regardless of the future, regardless of any advances humanity makes in computing. That's why governments and militaries, when they need absolute security, and the cost of failure is catastrophic, still use one-time pads or variations of it. The famous red telephone between Washington and Moscow during the Cold War used one-time pads. Keys were randomly generated, printed on pads of paper, transported by diplomatic couriers, used once and destroyed. It was logistically cumbersome, expensive, laborious, but it was absolutely safe. I'm not safe until computers get faster. Safe forever, because mathematics guarantees it. They say that during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when Kennedy and Khrushchev exchanged messages that could have decided the fate of humanity, the security of those communications depended on principles that I had formalized. The mathematics of perfect secrecy, protecting messages that decided between nuclear war and peace. It's hard to imagine an application with higher stakes. And this leads me to a deeper reflection on what the limit means. The limit I discovered is not just about encryption. It's about the nature of information and secrecy. It's about the fact that hiding information has a fundamental cost. Information does not disappear for free. To hide each bit of the message, you need at least one bit of random key, bit by bit. No shortcut, no trick, no magic. Randomness is the resource that buys secrecy. And like every resource, it is finite. It has a cost. It needs to be generated, stored, transported, protected. This is analogous to thermodynamics. In thermodynamics, to create order, you need to expend energy. There is no free organization. The second law says that entropy always increases. To decrease entropy locally, you need to increase it elsewhere. Similarly, in cryptography, to create secrecy, you need to spend randomness. There is no free secrecy. To hide information, you need to invest random information. And the minimum amount of randomness required is exactly equal to the amount of information you want to hide, not a bit less. This is what I call maintaining secrecy. The information you want to hide doesn't disappear. It is masked by the randomness of the key. If the key has enough randomness, the mask is perfect. If not, the mask has holes. Holes through which information leaks. And every missing bit of randomness is a hole in the mask, a fraction of information that escapes, which is available to the opponent, which can be explored with enough patience and computing power. And you know what's fascinating? The same logic applies to nature. Quantum mechanics has a concept called entanglement, where two particles share information in such a way that measuring one reveals something about the other. But the amount of information that can be shared is limited by the same laws of information theory. There is a quantum analog of channel capacity, called quantum capacity, which defines the limit and maximum information that can be transmitted securely using quantum resources. And there is a quantum analog of the one-time pad, called quantum key distribution, which uses the properties of quantum mechanics to generate and distribute truly random keys between two parties, with the guarantee that any eavesdropping attempt is detectable. Quantum physics doesn't break my limit, she confirms it. It offers new ways of achieving it, but not exceeding it. When I look at the world today, I see my limit everywhere. Every time you access a secure website that lock on the browser, the connection is protected by computer encryption. Not for perfect secrecy, for computational secrecy. Safe enough for most purposes, but not absolutely safe. Every time your bank processes a transaction, every time you enter your card password on a website, every time you make a cell phone transfer, security depends on assumptions about the adversary's computing power. Assumptions that are reasonable today, but may become false tomorrow if quantum computing advances far enough. Every end-to-end encrypted message you send on your cell phone is protected by algorithms that are computationally secure, not mathematically secure. When the app says your message is private, what it really means is your message is private as long as no one has enough computing power to break the algorithm. And today, no one has. But today is a dangerous word in cryptography. Because tomorrow could be different. The difference matters. It may not matter today, but it will matter when quantum computers become powerful enough to break the algorithms that protect everything. And that's why the race for post-quantum cryptography is so urgent. Governments and companies around the world are working on new algorithms that are resistant to quantum attacks. Algorithms based on mathematical problems that quantum computers cannot solve efficiently. Will these algorithms be safer against the quantum threat? Probably. Will they be absolutely safe? No, because they remain computational secrecy. They depend on assumptions about what is computationally difficult, and assumptions may turn out to be false. The history of cryptography is a long list of assumptions that turned out to be false. The only system that does not rely on assumptions is the one-time pad. The only system that reaches the maximum limit of secrecy. The only system that is mathematically, permanently, irrevocably safely safe. And price, as I have proven, is as long a key as the message. That's the limit. That is the price of perfection in cryptography. And no technological advance, no future discovery, no revolution in computing will change that. Because it is not a technological limit, it's a mathematical limit, a limit of information theory, a limit that comes from the very nature of what it means to hide information. There is a limit that defines the maximum possible secrecy, a limit that separates the unbreakable from the very difficult to break, a limit that took wars to understand and that silently governs every transaction, every message, every digital secret that travels the world every second. A limit that I discovered by thinking about copper wires and telegraph signals, and which turned out to be valid for quantum computers and elliptic curve cryptography and blockchain and everything else that hasn't been invented yet. Because the limit is not about technology, it's about information. It's about the fundamental cost of hiding something. And that cost doesn't change over time. It doesn't change with technology. It doesn't change with anything. There is a limit. And he is as real as the speed of light, as inviolable as energy conservation, as permanent as the mathematics that supports it, as silent as the secret it protects, and as present as every password you've ever typed, every message you've ever encrypted, every transaction you've ever entrusted to the security of an algorithm. There is a limit, and nothing in the universe can surpass it.